Elevation Nation. Boom right there, Myles. This is a long time coming. This is a very special moment in not just Elevation Nation history, but I want to say just my life, Sam's life, and our new elevator, Myles Grossman's life. Just three best friends coming together to have a conversation about life, about mental fortitude, about elevating. And man, this is a long time coming. Welcome to Elevation Nation, Myles Grossman. What's going on, brother?
It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I am really excited to hear what kind of questions you guys have cooked up. We have talked about pretty much every topic on this earth together, so I'm ready for it. Whatever you guys fire at me, we're ready to talk. Let's go, baby.
We've been asking Myles to become an elevator since we started Elevation Nation. And when first asked, Myles said, "Not yet. I'm not ready. I haven't done enough." When asked a second time, "Not yet. I've done stuff, but I don't feel like I'm an elevator." A third time, "I don't think so. It's not the right time for me." I don't know what time we're on now, but I'm so excited that we finally get to have you on the podcast to share your story, because we've had countless podcasts together. They just haven't been recorded. And the conversations that we've had as us three, as this triangle of human beings that I love so dearly, are truly what inspire the deeper conversations of Elevation Nation. And so we certainly won't get into everything that Parker, Myles, and myself have talked about over the years, because this is going to be focused on something a little more specific, on Myles Grossman and his journey. And I'm very ecstatic, as I know as Parker, to be able to share just a small part of your story. Obviously, we have all the basic facts. Myles grew up about 15 minutes away from me in Deerfield, Illinois, was an athlete all his life, ended up going to the University of Maryland, where we all met and became close and quick friends. And then our friendship continued to blossom over the years in the same fraternity together, traveling the world together in Europe and in Asia. And then for Myles and myself, living together in New York City and really becoming close and having a brotherhood there. Myles and I were best men in Parker's wedding recently and gave the toast of a lifetime.
Are you allowed to say that though? Like that you gave the best toast of life? I feel like I'm the one who's supposed to say it. Like you guys gave
I don't care.
A toast of a lifetime. First of all, just got to say this on the record. I gave you guys 5 minutes total, and you told me, "Oh, I only need 2.5 minutes." Myles is like, "Yeah, I only need 2.5 minutes." Sam's like, "Oh, I only need 2.5 minutes." All right, that makes 5 minutes. I timed it, and I didn't time it. I looked at the video. 12.5 minutes. You guys completely lied. But you know what's crazy is that it was 12.5 minutes that you guys kept the room rumbling and everyone engaged, and it was a moment in the night where it was very special, and I can't thank you enough for that. Sam, what an intro on Myles. But Myles, we want to give you the floor because we do ask every elevator. One simple question to start every podcast is, what's your elevator pitch, man?
It's a great question. And I'm still trying to figure that out. As everyone, I think as a person that is focused on evolution and growth and becoming the best version of myself, I'm always trying to grow and evolve into that next version of myself. And actually, Matthew McConaughey in his book has this awesome concept. When asked, "Who is your hero?" he says, "Me in 10 years. And then in 10 years, no, he doesn't reach that version of himself, but he has to strive to become the even better version of himself 10 years out. So my elevator pitch today is that I think it's really important to live life to the fullest, do what makes you happy, and try to become the best version of yourself so you can make the world a better place. So that's what I'm trying to do, and I know I have a lot of work to continue to evolve into the best Myles Grossman that I can be, but I believe I'm on the right path. And I think with you guys, elevators in my corner, you guys have helped support that for many years, and there's no doubt that as I continue to find myself and dig deeper into who Myles Grossman really is, we'll all figure that out together.
A beautiful elevator pitch for 2024 Myles Grossman. But I want to throw it back a little bit, Myles, because I don't think your answer would have been that if we went back
No shot.
5 years when we lived in New York City together, or even further when we were all in in college together.
Or let
You've
alone
certainly,
like 9 months. I don't know.
yeah, you've certainly evolved and continued to elevate over time. I want to, kind of paint the picture chronologically for folks so they can follow along. I think we have many listeners who are friends of ours and friends of yours who are tuning in because they want to hear your recent adventure. You did something pretty special. But before we get into that, we kind of have to go back a couple years to a little bit of hardships that you certainly went through, and I think all of us went through together. Can you talk to us a little bit about, your struggles, your family struggles that you ran into, and how you guys kind of handled that situation, and kind of paint the picture for us of how this entire evolution of Myles truly started?
It's a great question. Myles first was born November 29th, 1995. And then I graduated college in 2018. And I think the time between there, life was beautiful, and I had a perspective on life that was borderline unrealistic. It was not sustainable, and I was really fortunate to have a beautiful family, and that was the most important thing in my life. And I could never have imagined anything taking that away. And then in May of 22, that's about 2 years ago we're coming up on, everything changed. Earlier in that year, I was living life. Had an incredible job, traveling, hanging out with friends on my 4th year in New York City, and I really feel like I had things figured out. And then I got a call Friday the 13th that my sister was worried about some health issues, and she ultimately found out that she had a massive tumor in her, and they didn't know what type of cancer it was. I don't need to go through all the details, but 10 months later, she unfortunately passed away after a brutal battle with cancer that they don't even know what type of cancer this was. My sister was my best friend in the entire world, and I don't know of another brother and sister that had anything close to the relationship that we had. It was incredibly unique, incredibly special, and she's no longer on this earth, which is devastating to even say now. And I've had over a year to try to process that, and I'll probably spend the rest of my life trying to fully understand what that means. But it changed the entire dynamic of my family. And actually, at the same time that my sister passed away, my mother actually lost about 90% of her vision due to the stress and some complicated health issues as well. So my mother, father, myself, and brother, and my friends and family have gone through the ringer over the last 2 years, just trying to figure out, like, how did this happen? What does this mean? And the grieving process is endless. So when she finally passed in March, I had a completely new life to start. And a few months went by where I was living in New York, same apartment, same job, same group of friends. There was so much that seemed similar, but there was this one massive difference that I couldn't overlook. And it was almost hard to get out of bed and try to live that normal life and feel like everything was normal and go through the habits that I was accustomed to. So eventually I just said, I need a change. And I had a job that I loved, an apartment I loved, in New York City, a place that I loved, and my friends. Everything was great, except I had so much that I needed to figure out. And so I ultimately quit my job, found a sublease, and booked a one-way trip to Paris. And that was in September. And I didn't know what that journey would look like, but I landed in Paris with my brother. We spent 10 days together. We went to Belgium, and then we went to I actually ran the Berlin Marathon. And then we celebrated Oktoberfest. My dad surprised me. And that time that I spent with my father and my brother, after the hardship that we faced, realizing that we were still able to celebrate and cheers and have a great time together despite the hardship, just catapulted me into this mindset that it was like, I know I went through the darkest times, and I know it's possible to pull myself out of that negative space and bring myself to the light and find enlightenment. So the next 6 months, me and my backpack, just explored the world. I spent another couple weeks in Europe, almost 4 months in Asia, and we'll get into some of the details and the crazy stories and the hardships and the beautiful moments and the people I met along the way. I have the chills running through my spine right now, just like reminiscing on some of the things that happened, because I had so much fun. I had the 10 best days of my life on that trip, the same year that my sister died, which I just think is borderline unfathomable. And that, I think, is maybe the greatest accomplishment of my life, is the fact that I went from the darkest, deepest, roughest patch and basically took it upon myself to pull myself out of there. And I'm not fully out of it, but there were moments where I felt like I was on top of the world in terms of just being happy, doing what I wanted, learning and evolving and growing into the best version of myself. So I returned back to the States at the end of February after almost 6 months. My hard return date was my sister's birthday. Wanted to celebrate that with my family. And I've been back in the States for about 3 months now, still a nomad. I spent a month in Miami living with my family, and then I kind of bounced around, Vegas, Chicago, New York, and slept on couches and hotels and with friends and my brother. And I'm officially about to not be homeless anymore. I'm moving to Las Vegas this weekend. So life over the last 9 months has been an insane ride. I have literally been homeless and I have been bouncing all over the place, but I am ready to enter this new chapter as the absolute best version of myself with incredible lessons, takeaways, and a very newfound perspective.
I just want to put it out there that you don't look homeless right now, but there was a moment you did look very homeless. And I want to say that was when we went to Colombia and you met us there. And I'm like, wow, Myles really is letting everything just happen in his life. And just every day, every minute, I think Sam and I both agreed that you were just so present in where you were in that moment in time. And I think that's a reflection of the experience that you had. But before we jump more into that experience that you had abroad with just you and your backpack, talk through the moment where you actually made the decision in your head that you were going to quit your job and make this leap. Because I think that takes a ton of mental fortitude to leave the comfort of reality and say, you know what? I'm just going to go do this thing and do it by myself.
Yeah, so when we studied abroad, the three of us and Noah, we lived together in Barcelona. And for 4 months, we had the absolute greatest time. And it wasn't just about the partying and the fun. I felt like we learned more about ourselves and the world than any other chapter in my life. I wasn't worried about school, but I was educating myself. And I think we all grew and evolved as people and had so much fun. And that's what life's about. So from that moment, I said to myself, I don't know when, but I want to travel the world. And then we graduated and I started up with a job that I loved. And obviously, there's a lot of things going on. So you can't just pick up and leave so easily. And then actually a good friend of ours, Sam Levin, he decided to pick up and he moved to Mexico. And I visited him at the end of that trip. And shout out Sam, he grew and evolved and seemed like an incredible version of himself. So then I wrote a journal entry right after I returned from that trip. And that was actually in March, about 3 months before Hallie passed. And said, hey, I commit and promise myself. I literally signed a contract in my journal that said I will spend at least 6 months traveling the world alone at some point in my life. And that was clear to me. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, but it was not up for debate. It was happening. It wasn't an if, it was a when. And then, when the world just completely shattered and crumbled and I had to essentially figure out like what was going on, who am I, and what is my path in the future and the rest of my life, I felt like there was no better time where I had no obligations to anyone other than my family and myself to do what was best for me. And once I really came to the conclusion that I would never regret doing this, but I would always regret having not done this, and I have a serious fear of regret, there was no way I wasn't going to do it. So I just had to rip the Band-Aid off. And I remember the three of us actually went to the treehouse leading up to my decision as I was thinking about what am I doing? This is like the end of the summer. I knew that the path I was on needed to change and I just didn't know how. And we talked it through and helped me understand the path forward that immediately became clear. And I booked that flight and I went to my boss, who was somebody that I admire and deeply respect, told him my plans, and he had so much respect for that decision, and there was nothing holding me back at that point. So I found a sublease, got rid of my job, figured out the resources required, and essentially everything that was holding me back from going on that trip I had to sort out. And
talk about those things that like the brain, like you're talking about like obviously the process of overtime, but you sitting in your bed at night thinking about this, like what was going through your head?
It was so overwhelming. I don't even know how I can articulate it, but I essentially felt like I had a worldview that was completely crushed. So I felt completely lost. I had these values and this perspective, and I thought I knew what life was. And I thought, honestly, like the analogy I would give is that if you were playing Grand Theft Auto, like you can't always like veer off the mountain, like it corrects you and it pulls you back in. So I didn't know that anything horrible could really happen. I thought like if I tried to jump off a cliff or I was going to get in a car accident, God would step in and figure it out and nothing actually could happen. I felt like I was invincible. I felt like my family was invincible. And then that clearly is not the reality that we live in. And then I almost was like, do I know anything to be true? And I felt like I needed to almost reconstruct my worldview and figure out what is happening in the world and what matters and what my priorities and values are. And I didn't know another way to do that in New York with my job and the noise and the chaos and the distractions. So the only way I felt like I could confidently sit with my own thoughts and reconstruct my worldview and figure out what matters, what I want to do. Do I want to become a monk? Do I want to, start a company? Do I want to move to Bali? What do I want to do? And I didn't know. And I felt like the only way I could sit and consider multiple ideas and paths forward that I had never considered would be to spend time alone. And when we were in college, I know you guys remember, I didn't like spending time alone. I wanted to be around my friends. I wanted to be around everyone. I'm a social creature, and I am energized by being around people. So the thought of being alone on the other side of the world was beyond daunting and intimidating, like almost my biggest fear at the time. And I felt like if I faced my biggest fear of losing my sister, which was before that, and I conquered that and survived it, there's nothing that I couldn't conquer. And so I said, you know what? I'm going. And worst case, I either have to come home or I die or whatever it may be. I can't control the outcome of life, but I know I can control what I can control. So I booked that flight and I jumped on it and I showed up in Paris and then I decided to do what I needed to do. And it was really, really challenging. That was the craziest leap of faith I've ever taken. And I'll tell you about another crazy leap of faith soon. But I am a thrill seeker. I'm an adrenaline junkie. I love cliff jumping and skydiving, and I love that shit. And this trip for me was maybe the scariest and boldest risk I'd ever taken. I had no job situation set up. I had no idea where I was going to be, what I was doing. There was an insane amount of uncertainty that I had to face. And I had incredibly high hopes and expectations for this trip. And I was almost nervous that my expectations were too high and that I wasn't going to be able to meet it. And that was uncertainty that scared me as well. And now in hindsight, it exceeded my wildest dreams for so many reasons. And that has taught me to trust the uncertainty of outcomes. And just, you have to believe that it'll all work out. And even if it doesn't, obviously Hallie's situation didn't work out, you find a way to survive. And it works out in a way that maybe you didn't hope for, but you find a way to make it work.
That new mindset, Myles, I think is something that we all can strive to adopt a little bit more. And it's not easy to let go. You and I have gotten into this debate of the concept of, does everything happen for a reason or not? And thinking through that. And I think surrendering to the universe, that could be a whole nother episode on energy and affirmation and stuff like that. So I'll save that for another time. But just having faith, I think, if you don't believe in the universe working out for you, have a little confidence that you're going to figure it out. That's kind of how I've turned it for myself, is maybe I don't believe fully that the universe always has my back, but a different type of energy that I believe in is whatever situation you put me in, I'll be able to figure it out. And it goes to actually another elevator that you introduced us to, his mental motto, Jesse Rosen, everything is figure outable. And I think that kind of throwing your hands up and saying, I don't know what's going to be thrown at me, but I'm going to figure it out. I have the tools and the skills and the mental fortitude to do so, is really a great way to live life. And so I commend you for that. I want to switch it up to something a little more lighthearted. When we announced we were going to do the podcast, I knew this was a question I want to ask. Myles, there was a point where you were figuring out who you were, exploring yourself. You certainly, as Parker said, let your hair grow out and looked a little bit homeless as you were traveling the world. And one of those changes you did was you decided to just paint your nails. Why did you do that? Why do you think it made so many people uncomfortable? And what do you think it taught you that concept of just simply painting your nails as a guy?
It's a great question, and I'm glad we're going to get to discuss this. Now that I'm back in New York after traveling, I'm realizing how judgmental people are in the world. I don't need to, specify which groups, but there's a lot of people in the world who are judgmental. And I found that people overseas tend to be much less judgmental and a lot more open-minded. People were curious, not judgmental. You've always had, there are people who will ask you a question and they'll be like, "Why'd you do that?" And then some people will say, "Interesting. Why'd you do that?" And so I found myself meeting people that were very curious and not judgmental. And I actually, while this is an interesting story, I picked up while in a taxi a few Russian hitchhikers, and one of them was a tattoo artist, and she was, encouraging me to get a tattoo. And I wasn't sold on it. I didn't know if I was ready to make a commitment for my whole life, but I thought, what else could I do? And she said, "What about painting your nails? Have you ever thought about that?" And the answer was honestly no, I hadn't. And I thought that in New York, I would never be able to get away with that. Professionally, socially, I thought people would be very judgmental and I didn't feel comfortable. But I realized that I wanted to get really comfortable doing things that I didn't care what other people thought. It is the most liberating, freeing thing when you do something for yourself, and whether people are going to judge you or not, you don't care. And I felt like while I was traveling, I was this free spirit, and these people were allowing me to be whoever I wanted to be. So I said, you know what, maybe let's try this on for size. Let's paint my nails. So I did it. And I sent some Snapchats, and there were some friends who were like, "Cool, good for you." There were some people who were like, "I don't like that look, but do what you want." And there were some people like my brother who was like, "I'd prefer you not to show this on social media." And I respect him, and he had a valid reason for that. And I would never want to embarrass my family. And I didn't necessarily think it looked great, but I was almost working on my muscle of accepting the fact that people might judge you. And I want to feel comfortable doing what feels good to me and being the true, authentic, genuine version of me. And I felt like I wanted to lift that muscle and work out the idea in my head of like, what does it feel like to be in a position where people might judge you? And I felt so confident doing that. And I think it would be a lot harder to do it in the current environment in America than it was out there. But I felt like trying that on for size helped me find myself, helped me be more comfortable expressing myself in ways that might not be socially acceptable. And it helped me recognize that there is such a list of social norms for all sorts of people that are accepted and not accepted. And I don't necessarily love that. I want people to be able to act as free as they want to be. So I almost wanted to inspire others who saw that. Maybe there are other people who behind closed doors wanted to make an announcement or express themselves in a certain way or wear this or do that, but they didn't really have the comfort, and maybe they were fearful of being judged. So I felt like if I had the ability to do something that was maybe a little risky, and maybe one person saw that and decided they wanted to take a risk and felt more comfortable doing that, then that would be awesome.
I'm going to judge you for the color you chose. How about that?
Feel free, man. You can judge me for whatever you want.
Kidding.
I mean, I honestly felt like I
What
should
was
have
it,
gone a little
black?
bit crazier.
Was it
I went black and white.
Black and white.
And honestly, I should have gone pink or like
yeah, I was
neon,
going to say
like,
purple. You got to go with color,
Yeah.
man. You went black and white. You're not a black and white
Next time.
guy. You're
No.
more of an orange.
That was my way of easing into it.
Okay, I see.
Myles, I think so. There's an entrepreneur that Parker and I love named Noah Kagan, and in one of his books, he recommends rejection therapy, essentially going up to a Starbucks barista and just asking if you can have $1 off, right? And so that exercise, I think, helps people deal with rejection, which I think is a great skill that we all can work on. You really have another exercise, which is like judgment therapy. People are going to judge. Give them something really to judge about. They're judging you for your nails. I almost feel like people who are nervous about judgment, they're always thinking about it some internal or physical attribute, right? Oh, I'm short. Oh, they don't like the holes in my beard. Oh, it's how I speak. Oh, whatever, right? If you give them something to judge you on, anytime you get a weird look, feel uncomfortable, you can almost blame it on that. And so I think it brings not only a little bit of protection, but also exposure to be like, everyone's judging me. Every single person is judging me now. Let me get used to it.
Or no one's judging you too. It's all in your head. And I think that's a mindset play that it's a game, a trick we play in our head that maybe the things that we choose and the things that we think might go against the societal norm or the constructs of society, we think are going to make us look a certain way, or think people are going to judge us in this certain way. When in reality, everyone's just focused on themselves in some way, right? And focused on who they are. That most of the time, it isn't people coming at me like, oh, damn, Myles painted his nails. Like, okay, your brother said something. Great. But I think we put up this wall that doesn't allow us to freely express ourselves because we think, we create this narrative in our head that we're not supposed to, or someone may look at us bad or look at us a certain way. And as a result of that, we all know where that ends, is that you're seeking your validation from everything else but yourself. Think about that for a second. You're seeking your validation in the world from everything else but yourself. Your entire life is between you and everyone you interact with, of course, and the people you love. But from the minute you're born to the minute you die, the only thing that's constant is you, which is crazy to think about. And so where we're going to wrap this up is we just got to give ourselves some more freaking grace. And maybe it's hard to find that confidence today's day and age. Maybe it is. Okay, maybe everyone's got their situation. But instead of looking outside, you got to look within, man. That's where all the mental fortitude starts.
Couldn't agree more. I think that was very well said. And I think once you know yourself and truly, deeply get who you are, then you can express that without having to worry about other people maybe misunderstanding you, because there's nobody who can understand you. I don't think you can judge somebody unless you've walked their entire life through their shoes. And you've never walked your life through anyone else's shoes.
Impossible.
So you're almost not equipped to be able to judge anyone. So yes, have there been people who have judged me? Yeah. Do they know my story? Absolutely not. Are they equipped to judge me? Do they know what my goals are? Do they know what I've been through? No. So are they able to make a fair assessment? I don't think so at all. So am I wasting my own energy worrying about the judgments of people who don't know anything about me, don't know what my goals are, and probably, are living very different lives than me? Right? So you should judge yourself, and that's it.
But there is a balance there too, because you still have to care for those who you love and you care about. You just might not need to care as much about the judgment that they bring to you. All right.
Yeah, you can take their... Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish.
I was going to say you could take their perspective in with an open mind, but that doesn't mean you need to hold it tightly and agree with it.
Fair enough. All right, let's move along. Okay, so we're traveling across the world, the globe. Myles Grossman and his little backpack. It wasn't very little, everyone. It was a massive backpack that, for some reason, it was like a 60. You could fit like a little child in there.
50-pounder.
Yeah, pretty much.
Seriously.
Okay, so after Europe, you hit some crazy parts of the world, and we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but give us a line of sight into one experience or one place that you're always reminded of as having such an impact on who you are today.
Lost you a little bit, Parks.
You froze on the question,
but
Parker.
I think I knew what you were asking. I'm going to start with Bali as a place that stands out to me as an incredibly impactful piece of the trip. First, there was the Bali Belly, which was 72 hours of extreme discomfort. I don't need to get into the details, but it was the sickest I've ever been. And then on the heels of that, I could not have appreciated my health more. And I could not have appreciated my environment more. I went from being pretty miserable for 3 days straight to that day that I started feeling better. I felt way better than 100%. And then after that, I ended up going to a 3-day yoga, meditation, and breathwork retreat where I put away all of my technology. I locked it in a safe, and I was literally for, every single waking hour of the day, yoga, this holotropic breathwork, meditation, journaling, sitting in this beautiful rice field at the pool, in the sauna, just relaxing. And that place allowed me to take a deeper dive into myself than I had ever done before. And I spent hours journaling. I literally wrote a journal entry and went through every single year of my life since first grade and tried to just recall, what do I remember? Who were my friends? What was important? And just really look back on that. I don't know when the last time you've looked back on elementary school, middle school, high school, college. You can learn a lot about yourself from your childhood years and what you like doing. And I reminisced on things, and I was able to close my eyes and visualize what it felt like in my classroom in fifth grade and my bar mitzvah and these different moments in my life. And that helped me understand myself to an incredibly deep level, and I developed confidence, and it was incredibly profound. From there, I ended up getting my scuba diving license, which is now one of my favorite hobbies. It's one of the most mindful, meditative practices. You're literally underwater. The noise from the earth is gone. You're just breathing, and you can't even communicate with anything around you. You're just there. And so there were moments where I was 70 feet under the water looking at massive 8-foot blacktip reef sharks, and I saw 30-foot whale sharks. And you're exploring this environment that almost feels like another planet. And that was life-changing. It completely changed my perspective on the earth that we're here in and on. And it made me have a deeper appreciation for nature. And I mean, there were just so many moments in Bali that stood out. And then the last thing that I'll say in Bali was there is actually a person that stands out. I'm going to call him Octopus. He was my scuba diving instructor. Octopus and Lila were incredible. And if you ever end up in Bali, Parker, I know you're going. I hope you can get a chance to meet them. But they not only made my trip special because they taught me how to scuba dive, but Octopus actually was maybe the happiest person I've ever come across in my life. He's homeless. He worked as a scuba diving instructor, which is what he loved. He slept outside, and he didn't have a cell phone. And this guy had the biggest smile on his face all the time. And so I would scuba dive with him, and then after scuba diving, we'd hang out on the beach. And that was his life every single day, and he loved it. He doesn't have a phone, a bank account. Like, his life was incredibly simple. And then I reflected on some of the richest, wealthiest people that I know in America who seem on paper like they have it all, but they're incredibly stressed, and they work so hard that they miss out on time with their family. And it made me really try to understand, like, how do you achieve happiness? And on that trip, when I gave him my backup old broken iPhone and saw the happiness on his face, realizing how much of an impact that made on him, I mean, how long do you think one of our friends could live without a phone if they dropped their phone in the ocean? 5 minutes? This guy just didn't have a phone and didn't have a plan to get one and didn't even care. And it was amazing. And so the happiness equation that I'll share that I took away from that experience specifically is happiness is what you have divided by what you want. So if you have a lot, but you want more, you're not fully satisfied. If you have almost nothing and you want almost nothing, that's a full happiness, like 1/1, that's 100%. So there might be some billionaires who want to be a trillionaire. That is not a great fraction. You know, they're missing out, they're lacking. So I feel like one of the important lessons that I learned was not just try to get more, but manage your desires. Because when you have a desire is essentially a contract that you have with yourself to not be fully satisfied until you get what you want. And this actually leads me to a motto that I like, which is, do you want to chase happiness or choose happiness? What does that mean to you guys? I'll open it up. What are your, I've asked you before, but what does that mean to you? You have a choice. You could either chase happiness or choose it.
I think it's something that a lot of Americans specifically struggle with because our societal norm that's shown in movies, that was passed down from our government and from our parents, was to chase the American dream, not to choose the American dream. And so chasing happiness and choosing happiness, I think, ironically goes very close with that phrase that many Americans know. We are always trying to chase more. And I think chasing that is fine when that more is you're trying to chase becoming a better person, elevating your mindset, being truly happier, more fulfilled, making the world a better place. But if you are chasing things, that's where it gets dangerous. And so between chasing happiness and choosing happiness, I think you can choose to be happy and try to have that mindfulness and mindset and choose happiness in the moment, but chase you becoming and elevating into a better person.
I love that. Very well said. And I'll actually even give you a visual. Imagine chasing something. If you're chasing something, you don't have it. You don't possess it. You're lacking. If you choose happiness and you say, I am a happy person, I am happy with what I have today, then you're not lacking. You actually possess that happiness. So I think it's the perspective. And there's a lot of people who are stuck on that hedonist treadmill. It's like a mouse trying to chase the cheese. You know, they're never going to get it. There's always more. I want to make $1 million. Okay, I made it. Now I want 10. Now I want 100. Now I want $1 billion. People are never satisfied. And there's the law of diminishing returns that once you achieve something, it doesn't give you that same value. So then you need to achieve more to get the same satisfaction. If you could control your desires and say, I have things in my life and I lack things in my life, but I'm going to focus my energy on and attention on the things that I have, you'll be grateful and appreciative, and you'll reflect that with your energy. And that, I think, is the way that you attract positive experiences coming into your life. And I validated that firsthand on my trip. Is, you know, when I was in a bad mood, I would bump my knee and bang into something and hurt myself. When I was living free and happy with gratitude and appreciation for life, that's when the blessings that you could never have imagined just plop right onto your lap.
I think it also, to answer your question about choosing or chasing, is unfortunately in our society, corporations and people know about other people and what we want so much and what we want more of and what we, well, I mean, you could think about the job, take the job out of it. Okay, great. But like even Myles, we've had conversations about this and how reactive we are as people, right? We have our phone, instant gratification all the time. You know, if we're not feeling something, you know, we can just pick the phone up and get that instant hit of dopamine now and make us feel better. That sounds like chasing, because you're just chasing a little bit of happiness when you're bored, right? Or the time when you're, you know, walking around and you see a pair of shoes and you think the shoes are going to make you happy. You buy the pair of shoes, you wear the shoes proud and happy for a week, and then they get a little dirty and now you're like, oh, damn, what's next? And society has created that illusion that we need more to be happier, to your point about that, Sam. And it's crazy to think about
Parks,
that.
check your Wi-Fi, bro.
It's all right. We're good. As long as, can you hear me?
Got you now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's still recording.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, cool.
So as long as you're a human, you're going to feel that there's urgencies. You're going to have the urge to go and do and go and chase, because there's always something more. And it's so hard, I feel like, as a young adult, especially in our society. New York City, D.C. Instead of says D.C. is better than New York, great, whatever. D.C.'s a lot of chasers too. Chicago, L.A., any big city. And you can even look outside big cities. It's who we are as people. We're always chasing because we're always seeking. We're always trying to find more. But to your point about just taking a step back and choosing and accepting the reality that we have been given and accepting what we have now, that takes a lot of mental fortitude.
There's a story that I want to share that kind of goes along with that. There's a 20-year-old guy. He's, you know, trying to figure out his life, and a genie pops out and says, you get 3 wishes. As a natural guy, he says, I want a smoking hot wife. Poof. Then he says, I want to be a billionaire. Poof. Him and his wife check their bank account. They're 65 years old and they're billionaires. He looks at his once smoking hot 21-year-old wife. She's aged. He looks at his bank account. Great, I have $1 billion. But he lost his whole career, his whole life, and he didn't get to live that. Genie says, what's your third wish? And he goes, cancel out the other 2. I want to go back to the start. And so it shows you that people get focused on this destination, on this goal of, I want to get to the $1 billion limit, or I want to do this, I want to accomplish that. Stop. Enjoy the road and the journey and the path that you're on. And I think that on my travels, that was one of the most important things. I wasn't traveling to get home and become a different person. I enjoyed every single bite of food. I sipped on that coconut on the beach and savored the taste and made the most of it and appreciated that journey. And I think that's one of the most important ways that you can live and experience a life to the fullest is by appreciating the journey rather than focusing on where you want to get and being
Okay,
fixed
I have
on
a
that.
question because I'm going to challenge you now. I know you.
Yeah.
Sam knows you. A lot of people know you who are going to be listening to this. You're still chasing. How are you finding yourself in times when you're chasing, and what do you do to help yourself not chase anymore?
You guys know I have not been planning the future. You ask me, hey, you want to go on a vacation in August, September? I'm like, I'll let you know a week before. I am trying to prioritize living in the now, and I think the more you try to plan your future, that's taking you out of this moment. So yeah, of course there are things in the future that I want, but I've been trying not to get attached to future outcomes because you could get attached to something that may or may not happen a year down the road and try to strive for that. And then there could be something out of your control that completely shifts the path that you're on and makes it so that goal that you were striving for is now something that you're maybe not prioritizing. And I saw how quickly life can change. So I'm trying to focus less of my attention and energy on the future, prioritize the now. Of course, you can't completely like neglect tomorrow and next month and next year, but I think it's a balance. Maybe if I was focused on 60% of my time in the future, maybe I'm dialing that back and trying to minimize it to 20 because it's always great to have things to look forward to. It's always important to have something on your calendar that you can be excited about and eager about. But I don't want to be focused on what's down the road in 2 months. I want to be at this step, one step at a time in this journey. And that comes down to being mindful. And I think meditating and trying to like ground yourself and calm yourself when you notice yourself going nuts. I'm an aggressive, intense, like I grip life very tightly and I'm a white knuckled kind of person. So it was actually really hard for me to try to dial that back and slow and become more mindful and meditative. I even sometimes try to help my voice and my energy and my body operate at a slower, more calm pace rather than taking a bite of your burrito, chewing it, swallowing it, and
then
eating it as
going
fast
for
as
a
you can.
60-mile run while
Take a
doing
bite
it.
and enjoy that flavor. Yeah, exactly. So it's trying to experience the stimulation that you get from all five of your senses rather than just gulping it down, swallowing it whole, and getting to the next thing.
That way of approaching life, I think, will prove very fruitful for you. And I think we all can learn and strive to live in the moment a little bit more and experience more. I want to bring us to another topic around you leaving New York. As the social chair of our fraternity, as my most popular friend, someone with quite possibly the largest network of folks, you had a lot of people really sad with you leaving. And when you left, there were a lot of people who wanted to still have your time and attention. And I remember us talking about this, and this has been a consistent conversation we've had, both while you were abroad with your attention being diverted into places, and now that you're back. A lot of people want a piece of Myles Grossman. And as a people pleaser, you used to give everyone a piece of Myles Grossman. How have you changed your mindset around being a people pleaser and focusing more on tempering other people's expectations of yourself?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the biggest challenges I faced in my life up until this point was that I was so focused on pleasing everyone else that I didn't always have the time and energy to do what I needed and what I wanted. And the first time in my life that I said, fuck everyone else, I'm focusing on me, was when I left for this trip. There's actually another Matthew McConaughey concept that I love. I wrote it down because I forgot it. Okay. He has this idea. It's called an egotistical utilitarian. And that concept, it's a paradox. If you're egotistical, all you do is think and care about yourself. And if you're utilitarian, your goal is to create the most utility for the world, for the greatest good for humanity. So if you're egotistical, how can you be good for the world? And it's the actual order of those words. First, you need to take care of yourself so that you can add value to the world. So, for example, if you're homeless, don't start giving away everything you have to charity. You don't have anything to give. So what your priority should be is gather resources for yourself so that you're able to take care of yourself, and then you can share. So I felt like when my sister passed, I had nothing to give anyone. I was broke and homeless. You don't go up to a homeless person on the side of the street, ask them for money. They have none. That's how I felt about myself. So it took me getting to a place where I physically was incapable of supporting and providing anything to anyone. That was when I was like, okay, if you give anything to anyone else, it's at the expense of yourself and you have nothing to give. So I had to focus on me. For 6 months, I focused on me, and it was the greatest thing I ever did. And now I'm confident that I'm in a position to support my family, support my friends, add value to the world because I took care of myself first. So it comes down to priorities. And for a while, I was prioritizing everyone else above me, which made it so I couldn't do the greatest good and provide the most utility. And now I'm realizing that I'm going to prioritize me and be a little selfish, which I had never done in my life. And now being selfish is making me be an even better version of myself, where I have more resources and energy and positivity to spread to the world that is going to benefit my loved ones and the people around me. So that's the best advice I could give to anyone who's a people pleaser is the best way to please other people is please yourself first. So you have the bandwidth to support others. Because if you're supporting others and draining yourself, then you're not going to be as effective.
Well said.
I'm proud of you.
Well said.
And it's still hard, and I'm still struggling with that. And I think moving to Vegas will take a little bit of the weight off because there have been people in New York who have come to rely on me. Oh, can I get a reservation? Can you help me with this? Can you book that? And I've loved doing that, and I never considered not doing it. But now that I am in a place where I can decide, is that a priority? Where does that lie on my list of priorities? And if it's, maybe below something else, then I'll do that first. And if I have time and energy, then I can
So Myles,
focus on it.
Yeah, speaking of, we need a reservation at Fort Charles next week when I'm in New York. So
Nah, sorry. I'm busy. I've got more important things to
Again,
worry
Sam,
about.
I mean, if I'm there. Oh, yeah, I'll join. I vividly remember an experience we had, Myles. It was you and me on the slopes of Aspen, Colorado, and we got lost, and we had an exceptional day. And we were weaving in and out of each other, just contemplating life and talking about things. And it was just, first of all, there was no cell service, so you couldn't be on your phone. It was just very present. And I felt like at that moment, we just talked about so many different things. This was before all of this stuff transpired in the last couple of years, right? And I remember you and I both agreed that as long as you're making the world a better place and you're doing right by others, you'll end up in a good place. And I bring that up now because you're saying that you're so focused on you, but because you had to build yourself up. You had to be egotistical, that egotistical utilitarian, right? And now you're going to Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious to you, how do you plan on utilizing that mindset that you are focused on Myles Grossman right now, but at the same time reminded that if you make the world a better place and you do but right by others, that is where the real elevation happens?
I totally agree. And so I think it comes down to prioritizing what matters. So in my life today, I'm moving to Vegas this weekend. I'm starting a new job, which I'm really excited about, and that's going to be an important priority. And we can get into that. I have another lifetime mission, which is the Hallie 225 Foundation that I created with my family. My sister passed away, and she had plans to be a doctor, and she was the most charitable, compassionate person on this planet and wanted to heal people through medicine. She wanted to support people who are going through hardship, and unfortunately, she's no longer here to do that. So we've created this foundation as a vehicle to make the world a better place in ways that Hallie would have and dreamt of. So we want to help fund cancer research. We want to support people who can't afford medical bills. Hallie loved elephants, and so we want to create elephant sanctuaries and support them. And anything that Hallie wanted to do to make the world a better place, Hallie 225 will be setting up incredible events. We've already set up a few. We've raised over $40,000 in a short few months. We just actually brought on 16 new people. I don't want to call them hires. They're volunteers. They're our family. They're incredible people who want to support making the world a better place in Hallie's name. So between taking care of me, growing my career, building Area 15 and the Fisher Brothers portfolio through real estate, and working with retail, restaurant, fashion brands, which is my passion, and I can make the world a better place by creating these incredible environments where families go and have vacations and live life to the fullest, build Hallie 225, and then have time to travel, support my friends, and do it all. And there might be some months where I'm underwater with work, and that's my priority, and I don't have time for friends. There might be times where I'm crushing it at work and everything's humming there, and then I need to focus more on being around my loved ones. And it's, that's life, is balancing all those things. And I tend to be black and white in some ways. I don't have a middle speed. I'm either going 100 miles an hour or zero, and honestly, I'm only going 100. So I think finding a balance and balancing family, myself, my career, my happiness, my friends, my health, and holistically incorporating all of those things into my list of priorities is going to be a challenge, but that's what life is all about, and I think we're all doing that at some level.
The
So
black and white toenail painting is the perfect metaphor for what you just described.
It's interesting.
And maybe that is a symbol for the future, or a symbol of how you can ground yourself. But I think it's just so interesting that we bring it back to you painting your nails with black and white, and that is like so apparent in the way you see the world, the way you bring yourself to the world. And I can't wait to see you thrive. I think everyone would be like, if Myles Grossman lived his whole life and didn't live in Vegas, that would make sense. Like, this makes a lot of sense. You're at a company that you seem like you love. You're inspired by the mission and the people there, as well as the culture out in Vegas, and what you're inspired by, what you're building, what you're passionate about. And I am so excited to watch you continue to elevate over in Vegas, because I know you're not just going to be doing it in Vegas. You're going to be coming back to New York and Miami and other places in the world and elevating so many people through your passion, your commitment to making the world a better place, whether that is through Hallie 225, whether that is through Area 15, whether that is through hanging with your friends or your family, or just sitting on the couch and being Myles Grossman. Because we know when Myles Grossman's good, he's able to make the world a better place. And so I just want to say to that, we're proud of you for getting back to that point, man. What a journey.
means a lot. It was hard being at what felt like rock bottom, and not only was I struggling myself, but I knew my family needed me, and I knew other people that I loved in my life needed support, and I just felt like helpless. There was nothing I could do to contribute because I didn't have any love or support or positivity to give. So that trip that I spent 6 months on, just festering in positivity and love and gratitude and appreciation for life, and reminding myself how beautiful this world is. And just, I want to talk about the duality, black and white. I mean, I think I could tell the story of my life in two ways. One of them, I could say my 25-year-old sister died, best friend in the world, and my mom's blind, and all these horrible things happened to me. And I could talk about the victim mindset, which is reality. But the reality that I choose, and the lens that I choose to see when I live my life, is the reality that I think I'm the luckiest person on this planet. And I used to believe that, and then my sister got sick and passed, and I said I'm the unluckiest person. But this trip helped remind me of how many amazing things that you can appreciate. And I have gotten back to a place where I love life, and I am choosing happiness. I am choosing to appreciate the things that I have. And don't get me wrong, I know there's so much that I don't, but why worry and chase all of that then, rather than being so grateful for everything that I have right now. And I think everyone in the world, no matter how hard your situation is, you could find something or a few things that you're grateful for. And if you prioritize and focus on that with the exact same half cup, you're feeling like it's half full as opposed to you're lacking.
I think it's a beautiful mindset to share with the world and something we all can do a little bit better at. And so, Myles, like Parker said, we're extremely proud of you. As your best friends, we certainly have done our best to help you on your journey of life, most specifically through these past year-ish, 2 years, where things have been a little bit different for you and the entire family. And I think you've always inspired both of us. I love this friendship because you and I make no sense to be friends. We are so different. And yet we have Parker in the middle that kind of balances us out. And it's just been really special to watch you on your journey, continue to grow, elevate, and learn and become a better version of yourself. And I'm excited to be your friend as you teach me more lessons about life and take me scuba diving where I can actually see in front of me. So I'm honored. I'm grateful. You know, our last
we're not
segment
gonna do
at Elevation
rapid
Nation
fire?
is one that is near and dear.
With it, we could. You can't.
write
I
them
could come up
down.
with a
I don't have any
million rapid fire
fires.
questions for Myles. Like, yeah, I could rapid fire the
Give me
rapid
some rapid
fire.
fire. Let's go.
Okay.
I want it.
Best food that you ever had when you were traveling.
Kobe beef in Japan, melted in your mouth. It's something that doesn't exist outside of Japan. You can't get the real, true, authentic stuff outside of Kobe.
he tried.
Trust me, he tried.
All right, worst
He tried.
thing
He
that
tried
you
to get
ate
it here.
that you were like, I know you. You're like, you're throwing up on the table. You don't give a shit about anyone around you. What was that?
I tried some weird stuff. I ate crocodile. I tried jellyfish. I tried stingray. The crocodile stir fry was delicious. The crocodile jerky was tough and gross. Actually, in Bangkok, we ate some scorpion, which was kind of just like a salty cracker. I think maybe the weirdest thing was also something we did together in Iceland. We ate fermented shark bladder, and that was bizarre because it started sour and then it got spicy and then it kind of tasted like piss, and it was a whole sensory journey that at some moments was great, in others was borderline repulsive, but it was an experience to say the least. So I just thought it was fun exploring as many different wild cuisines as I could possibly get my hands on, and if there was an opportunity to try something that I wasn't going to die from, I was all in.
What was the worst flight or transportation method that you took to get somewhere?
I had a flight from Athens to Singapore, and on that flight I had an allergic
Classic.
reaction. I made sure there was no nuts. Of course there was. Felt pretty sick, went to the bathroom. It's like a 7-8 hour flight. I was in the bathroom for, not exaggerating, about 3 hours. And there were people banging on the door, banging, yelling in Asian languages. I don't even know which one. And when I opened the door after not feeling great for hours, I was depleted and struggling, and I needed some water. I walked out of there. There was a line of 12 people waiting for that bathroom that gave me the meanest look ever. And I was too sick to even worry about it, but I was just like thinking to them, like, if you only knew like what I was going through in there, I think you'd be a little bit more compassionate that you could wait a few more minutes to pee.
The fact
So that was a battle.
Is another conversation, but
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one.
oh man,
All right. I think Parker was talking, but you were frozen. So I'm going to throw another rapid fire. What was the most beautiful sight that you saw?
That's impossible, but I'm going to have to say I think being under the ocean, swimming with 30-foot whale sharks in the most beautiful coral reef off of the Philippines was mind-blowing and unique. I think the Pileus cloud, whatever you want to call it, that we saw, that magical rainbow phenomenon that we didn't even know existed. I mean, the skyline and the mountain views from, Europe, Asia, South America, there were so many. I think it'd be impossible and
All right,
unfair
last
to
one.
choose just one.
what's the meaning of life?
I think the meaning of life is to find who you truly are. I think for me, when I imagine myself on my deathbed, hopefully I'm 150 years old, looking back on my life, I hope that I have, I guess, done three things. Experienced as much happiness and joy as possible. I hope that I have evolved into the best version of myself while also deeply understanding who I am at a mind, body, and soul level. And then finally, contributing and adding as much positivity to the world as possible. I think it's those three pillars. So, Jimmy V says a day is full if you laugh, cry, and learn, I think is his three. I think if you smile, laugh, and have a special moment, if you grow, learn, or evolve in some capacity, and you do something good to somebody or you add some value to the world, if you do that every day, I think you will be incredibly fulfilled and the world will be a better place because of you.
And lastly, Myles Grossman, many years in the making. What is your mental motto?
So I already said what I originally had planned for my mental motto. It was choose happiness. It's, do you want to chase happiness or choose happiness? So I can't use that one. Another one that's coming to my mind, super simple, don't overthink it. Do you. Don't worry about what anyone else is doing. Don't have your mom help you decide what your life is. Don't let your teacher or, a random job that you can't get out of create your destiny. I think one of the biggest regrets that I fear is living a life that I didn't choose for myself. So in order to do you, I think that's a process, but you have to figure out who you are, what do you want, and how are you going to get there? So for me, I figured out who I am to some level, and I'm still working on that. It's a work in progress. I have some understanding of where I want to go, but that's still evolving. And I'm going to listen to myself, and I'm going to do me. And I'm going to make the most of it and live it to the
Four
fullest.
pillars of mental fortitude are knowing who you are, knowing what you want, and knowing what inspires you. What's beautiful about those three things and mental fortitude is that it is a never-ending process. We continue to ask ourselves who we are, what we want, and what inspires us because we evolve over time, and as a result, those things evolve over time. And Myles, I know you're taking mental fortitude with you everywhere you go, and you're living to those pillars every single day as you elevate yourself and others in the world. But I also want to just thank you, Myles, because the last year has been incredibly black and white for me as well in terms of how bipolar it has been, with the happiest of happiness in my life as well as the lowest of lows. And through my own grief in losing Philip, you've showed me and inspired me in so many different ways to see the world, to feel the world, to experience the world, to feel myself, to understand myself, my needs, and my thoughts that I will be forever grateful for because they have changed my life. And I don't know if I'd be able to go through the experiences, especially in the last year, without you. And I just want to thank you on the record, obviously the podcast, but you know how much that means to me. And I'm so grateful to welcome you officially into Elevation Nation.
It is an honor and it means so much. And I was tearing up hearing you say that, and I know how much you mean it. And other people listening may or may not understand the depth of what we've experienced together and the support we've had for each other, but we are family, and I'm so fortunate to be able to learn from you, grow alongside you, and experience the best moments of life together. So thank you, and can't wait to keep crushing it together. Big things coming for all of us, and let's keep it going, boys.
Until next week, Elevation Nation. Peace.